Good morning, Rabbi. How are you today?
Good morning, Rabbi. I'm doing well. Boker Tov. It's nice to have you in our sanctuary.
Rabbi, tell us your full name and where you are.
I'm Rabbi Noah Chertkov, and we are in a suburb of Milwaukee known as Fox Point at Congregation Shalom, which is a wonderful suburban congregation that is a really fabulous community.
Well, I'm zooming in here from South Lake Tahoe, from Temple Bat Yam in the south shore of Lake Tahoe. And Rabbi Chertkov and I went to rabbinical school together, and my family has been intricately involved in various ways over many decades at Congregation Shalom, the family at least that I married into. And your backdrop there, Rabbi, is this magnificent sanctuary, this place that has been home to prayer, to life cycles, to gathering for your congregation for a long time. And it's inspired a conversation that we're having today, conversation about the artist, Susie Durzan, and Jewish art in general and the Reform movement. And as we think about the roots of Reform organization, which is organizing us to have this conversation, think about all the ways that Reform Judaism has cultivated and brought different contributions from so many members of our people, the Jewish people. So, just share a little bit, Rabbi, about your first impression and experience of kind of the prominence of Jewish art at Shalom. From that first visit that you made years ago to today.
Interesting, actually, that you asked that, Evan, because when we were interviewing, when I was interviewing to come to Congregation Shalom, one of the first things that I did was I looked at the website. And the art of Susie Durzan was really prominently featured on the website. So I studied from the moment that I was interested in the congregation, all of the art that was displayed on the website. And it really struck me just how fabulously meaningful the art was and how it really evokes a story and it evokes values. And so you can tell a lot about a community by what the community values and what the art speaks to. In the case of our congregation, really what was featured were the 10 Commandment windows that I'm looking at, you're not looking at, but also the tree of life that surrounds the ark that is behind me that you can see as well. And it really is breathtaking. And not only from the imagery on the website, but certainly when I first walked into the sanctuary, it really took my breath away. It's a testament to not only the artistry that Susie brings forward, but also the vision that the congregation has about worship and space, which is really beautiful.
Thank you. I love that reflection that, it spoke to the values of the community of the congregation. And you think about Jewish art, and whatever that means, because it could mean something different to each of us or multiple things to each of us, right? But what is the role, not just there at Shalom, but that Jewish art does and has in the Jewish world and Reform Jewish life, from your experience as a rabbi, as a Reform Jew, and, kind of broader perspective than not only Congregation Shalom?
It's a really, Rabbi, that's a really interesting question, because before I went to rabbinical school, I studied in Canadian universities from where I'm from. And we studied the work of Marshall McLuhan. And he's famous for saying the medium is the message, or the medium is the massage, which means that there are all kinds of mediums through which we receive information, whether it's TV or Zoom, like we're speaking over today, or reading a newspaper or a book. But space can also convey information to an individual. And, in Jewish tradition, one of the ideas is that we don't create space so that it is overwhelming, that it sort of overwhelms the senses or makes you feel small. Rather, the art of our sanctuaries and our holy spaces are ones that really create a sense of intimacy and a sense of connection. And when you look at this space, it is glorious and it is majestic, but it also conveys values like the tree of life behind me. I've spoken to Rabbi Shapiro, who is our Rabbi Emeritus, who worked with with Susie in the creation of the space. And he really wanted the Tree of Life to reflect the idea that though we all come from the same source and our same root with our ideology and our theology, that the tree ascends upwards towards God, and yet there are many different passageways in order to get to that holiness. Just that idea in itself is something that conveys a certain value about openness and about community. And I find that very special. The other thing that that is really important is that there's a concept in Judaism called chidur mitzvah, which means to bring beauty to a mitzvah. And coming together as a community, to worship in a house, to attend the house of study daily, for example, is one of those primary ethical things that we can do, or primary source of practice that is meaningful. When we create a certain beauty around it, it creates spiritual connection, which is what we are all seeking.
I love that, right? From the not just the beauty piece in the Hidur Mitzvah, but also the idea of the medium. And it's certainly not the 3-story or whatever it actually is, Eitz Chaim, that's Tree of Life behind you. But we're blessed with these Ehrman tapestries and 3 more further down on the wall that Susie created with her sister Maxine Zinder and her daughter, my mother-in-law, Marcy Margolis. So synagogue art and Jewish art is certainly something that we find, and it does speak to those values. And I have this idea, this vision in my head, and I'm sure you've had countless experiences, but just what are the teaching tools that you found with this Jewish art, with this sanctuary, with the 10 Commandment windows, or whatever other pieces are on premises for young? I'm thinking about those religious school students or those preschool students, and what is that moment? What's something that just jumps out as a memory for you?
Actually, this past Sunday, I was speaking with second graders, and the previous Torah portion speaks about the Ner Tamid, that we should find precious olive oil and create light. And I had this really fascinating conversation with the second graders about symbolism. What do symbols mean? And it was actually really, you'd think it might be a little bit over the heads of second graders, but they really understood it. And they referenced right away the Tree of Life that's behind me without prompting. It was pretty fantastic that they understood that the Tree of Life behind me was a symbol, and that it represented something like Torah, and represented community, it represented the seeking out of the divine. And they actually really understand it. So it really conveys something that they can wrap their heads around. As much as that works for younger people, there is so much that works for older people too. And just the fact that we have the windows, which you might not be able to see because it's behind the camera, but there are these beautiful expansive windows that look out onto Santa Monica Boulevard. And what is impressive about that is usually when you walk into a sanctuary, you see yahrzeit boards, but here there's a certain amount of light that enters into the sanctuary. But there is also a tradition that in every sanctuary that there be windows. And the reason why there should be windows is that we can't be indifferent to the world outside, that the sanctuary, as much as it is a shelter and a comforting place, it isn't a shelter to prevent us from participating in the world. And that we have to be cognizant of the world around us. So even the windows have framed sermons that I've given to the adults, high holiday sermons about social justice and making sure that our world is something that we're connected to and we're not escaping from. As well as the 10 Commandment windows, which sort of show this embryonic state for each commandment that sort of speaks to the nature of each one of the commandments. It sort of captures the imagination and allows people to sort of do a midrash for the art itself. And so it's really an extraordinary teaching tool that speaks to not just the young, but it speaks to the very old. It's a lifelong place for learning, which is something that's really wonderful.
I love the bringing the symbolism, but also using the space and the medium around us. As you know, Noah, I do a lot of stuff out of doors, whether it's hiking or skiing or boating or biking, a lot of teaching on the trail, and certainly a setting. And I certainly am passionate about in the sanctuary, in the synagogue as well. And, I think as we think about the ways in which the space we're in, the medium, the tools, the symbolism, all of these things can inspire our hearts and our souls and make us think. I'm thinking about those second graders who are going to go to another sanctuary someday, somewhere else, and they're going to have a different experience because not all of them are like yours, right? And Susie and Rabbi Shapiro's, inspiring work. And I hope it inspires them to contribute in their own ways, in their own skill set to Jewish life wherever they go. I'm thinking a lot about the last 2 years and this pandemic, this COVID time, this virtual reality that we've created and kept our communities together and connected with different tools. You've got this OWL system. I've got simple laptops and a few cameras around my tiny sanctuary here and making it work so that we can stay connected. How is that the artwork of your sanctuary, of your synagogue? And I'm thinking specifically of, one of the quotes behind you, and I'll talk with Susie about it a little bit later, but the Asuli Mikdash, right? This make for me a sanctuary so that God can dwell with us and in the presence, the Shekhinah, whatever it is we believe. We know that felt different for a lot of people, but how were you able to tap into this beautiful resource and the symbolism and all of these tools of beautiful, amazing, and inspiring art during the COVID time? And also maybe, visual tefillah, how does that affect, and kind of just technology in general, the medium again, how does that affect and how has that been tied to and involved with the art that you have there?
Well, it's a great question. And from the outset of the pandemic, really, when I think about that first Shabbat, there was no question where we would be broadcasting from. Despite the fact that our congregants couldn't come into the sanctuary, what really became important was creating moments and opportunities to ground our congregants and connect them to the congregation. So immediately our first broadcast came from our main sanctuary. And then in time when we had to do our services from our homes, using Zoom, we have that virtual background, and there was no question that the virtual background would be the tree of life. It's something that exists throughout much of what we do at the congregation. It's on our website. It's usually in the background of our services or whatever it is that we are doing, so that people can feel that connection to the space. People feel very, very connected to this sanctuary because of the beauty of the space and what it represents to them. You mentioned the connections from all of those life cycle events, whether it's moments of joy or moments of sadness. People need to feel grounded. Interestingly enough, before COVID, we engaged in really updating our communications technology from the sanctuary. So we have HD cameras that are movable at the back of the sanctuary in sort of an unobtrusive way. And the other thing that we wanted to do was to be able to offer visual tefillah. Now that presented a real challenge in this space because it's so beautiful, and we didn't want to do anything to disrupt the feeling of the space. And I remember speaking with Susie about it and asking her opinions about how we could possibly have screens so that people could see on the wall. And I think actually both Susie and I were really struggling to find a way that we could do that would really preserve the beauty of the space. So we found a really extraordinary solution, which is that we have screens that actually come down from the ceiling so that we can display visual tefillah, and more importantly, that when we're not using it, that it tucks away into the ceiling and you'd never know it was there. And that was not only a promise that I made to Susie, that we would make sure that the space was not going to be disrupted from her vision and Rabbi Shapiro's vision, but we managed to find a way. And that has been something that's been very meaningful for our young people and our young families, so that they can sit in our space, they can have their arms around each other, they can look up at the bima. Instead of having their heads down into the books, they can feel connected with each other and communally looking at the bima and seeing the beauty of the space while praying. And it's proven to be really something very special.
That's awesome. And I just want to highlight the way, it demonstrates relationships and the way the feedback and the partnership and collaboration with community from Rabbi Shapiro's work with Susie years ago to create it, to the way that you're staying connected, not just with Susie, but making that available to the community. Yeah, I have one last thought, one last question. I'm thinking about this prospective member, this new person to the Milwaukee community, and they come in, and you get this honor, perhaps from time to time, of showing them the sanctuary, showing them this space that you are in. You know, briefly, what's a reflection of that moment of sharing that space with somebody who has not seen it before? Maybe they didn't even do the research on the website like you did.
Not just, prospective members, but school groups come through here and people who are learning about Judaism. There is something really special about opening up those doors and watching somebody walk in for the first time. And almost always you feel like this audible inhale that they take when they walk into the space. Just like when somebody walks into some sort of extraordinary piece of art in a museum. I mean, it is something that really conveys a sense of sacredness and a holiness that I think people feel when they walk into our sanctuary for the first time. But not just that, I'd say, even after, the 100th time, people still have that sense of majesty when they walk in here. And it is often that we will find that people will sit in the space, even when there isn't a service going on, just to feel that connection and that sense of holiness. In fact, that first year when we could not offer services in person during the high holidays, we offered people the opportunity to come into the sanctuary and meditate one by one. And there were many people who took us up on that offer, that just felt the need to be in this sacred space that conveys its own sense of spirituality. And that was something that was truly extraordinary. So I love that inhale. When I'm standing up on the bima and delivering a sermon, it is good to know that even if a congregant may not be connecting to what I'm saying, they are certainly connecting to the space and the beauty of this beautiful, wonderful piece of art that truly is a gift, that we are sincerely grateful to Susie Darzan and Rabbi Shapiro for creating for us.
I love that. And it resonates so strongly, Noah, with me. Many years ago when I began dating my now partner, Rachel, and who grew up and became bat mitzvah on that bima behind you. And they brought me there for the first time I got to walk in, and didn't make as nearly a big deal out of the art and Susie's contribution as maybe I would have if it was my grandma. I mean, it was like, yeah, she's a Jewish artist. She's done this work. She helped design the sanctuary. And I walked in there, and I know that was my reaction, was the, kind of that inhale and just, wow, it's grand and elegant. And to me, it just absolutely is just that moment of just embracing that space. No, any other thoughts you want to share just about the sanctuary and the honor and the opportunity you have to be senior rabbi at Congregation Shalom with this artwork and the resource that Susie is? And
yeah, I mean, this concept of, that Rachel showed you the sanctuary and the synagogue for the first time, and that she may not have made such a big deal, of that connection. But we have an expression here, Shalom, I'm home, right? And we want people to feel as though Congregation Shalom is their home. And this is sanctuary, absolutely, people take tremendous pride in, as if it is their home. And so I think when you walk somebody into their home for the first time, you don't necessarily show them all the things, but because it is their home, it's something that they feel connected to and sort of in a really beautiful and warm way. And this is, I know, a second home for Rachel and your dear family, that they all feel a sense of sincere connection to our community and our congregation. And that is something that is really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I look forward to getting back to Milwaukee this summer as we return to Berlin St. Ruby for some time this summer. So
look forward to seeing.
Yeah, kol hakavod to you, and todah, so much gratitude for sharing your time in the space and setting up the technology for Susie, and yasher koach and all the work that you've done to keep the community connected. And thank you again for your time, and really, really wonderful to at least see you this morning. Have a wonderful day.
Baruch Tia, thank you, Rabbi Yakar. It's wonderful to share the morning with you.